Welcome to the last month of online school, hopefully. Okay, we're going to continue with poetry structure again this week. We're going to look at the structure of poetry and specifically the meaning of poetry. And this is going to help us to be able to analyze poetry a little bit better in the next couple of weeks. So if you can see here, the essential question, how does the structure of a poem contribute to its meaning? In order to start out, we're going to look at two common types of poetry. The first is a couplet, and the second is a quatrain. You may or may not be familiar with these terms, but a couplet, if you look at the word, the first part almost looks like couple. We know that a couple is two. A couple of people is two people. So a couplet is a poem or stanza in a poem that is written in two lines, and it usually rhymes. There's an example here called the jellyfish. Who wants my jellyfish? I'm not a silly fish. So if you look, both of those lines rhyme at the end. It could be more than two lines as long as there's two lines in each stanza. The next type of poetry is quatrain. This is the most common type of poetry. If you look at the beginning part of quatrain, you see Q-U-A, and this has a T, but the typical word that means four is Q-U-A-D, quad. If you think of quadruplets, that's four babies. If you think of a quad and you're talking about a vehicle, that means it has four wheels. So a quatrain is a poem or stanza that's written in four lines. The quatrain is the most common form of stanza used in poetry. So we're going to see this a lot. It usually does have some sort of a rhyme scheme, but it doesn't have to have a specific pattern to be a quatrain. So there's an example here called the lizard. The lizard is a timid thing that cannot dance or fly or sing. He hunts for bugs beneath the floor and longs to be a dinosaur. In this poem, the rhymes are in lines 1 and 2, and then 3 and 4 rhyme. But like I said, it could vary depending on, how it was written. So now that you've gotten a little bit of an idea of what those two types of poetry are, here are two familiar poems to you that we worked with last week, Casey at the Bat and Why Nobody Pets Lions at the Zoo. Which poem is written in couplets and which one's written in quatrains? Remember, just by glancing here, we can look and see how many lines are in each stanza. So if we look at Casey at the Bat, each stanza has 4 lines, and those lines at the end, they do have a rhyme scheme. So Casey at the Bat then would be a quatrain. Why Nobody Pets Lions at the Zoo is written in 2-line stanzas, and they rhyme at the end of each stanza. So that would be a couplet. So now we're going to look at a new poem, and we're going to go through some steps on how looking at the structure and the meaning together help you to kind of figure out what the theme or the lesson to be learned from the poem. Not all poems have lessons, but a lot of them do. So let's just look at this poem together. I'm going to kind of model for you the way that you're going to be doing your assignment. So the steps. First, we're going to read the poem silently. You can read this out loud or silently. It's up to you. Next, we're going to preview our questions. Just like with any text, we want to kind of see what we're going to be looking for as we're reading. Then we're going to read the poem again and mark the text for meaning. Then we're going to read the poem a third time. Fifth, we're going to mark the text for poetry structure. And then finally, we're going to answer those questions. So the first reading, The Good Boy. The little boy, he thought he could, and thus he set out to do good. It was a habit that he had to only succumb to actions that were bad. His challenge, he knew, would be an abundant one, but he would succeed when the day was done. So he began and found it easy to assist others that were needy. He'd open doors and lug bags. He was even agreeable enough to help raise flags. The boy found out that it was fun to help other people, each and every one. And from that day on, he was no longer bad. On days there was no one to help, he was actually sad. To curb his sadness, he became a volunteer, giving his time to others, and his new mission was clear. He was now a good boy and enjoyed this label. He offered his time whenever he was able. He'd spend time at the shelter and with homeless pets. He also visited old people and injured vets. So now we're going to preview the questions. So if you look at number 1, we're going to be asked what the challenge was that the boy faced. Number 2, what was the meaning of to curb his sadness as used in the 4th stanza? Number 3, which line from the poem lets the reader know that the main character is relieved to be considered a good boy? And number 4, what is one possible theme of this poem? And then we'll have to provide evidence from the text to support that theme. So now as we read through this poem again, we're going to be looking for meaning and thinking about those questions as we do that. The second reading. The good boy. The little boy, he thought he could, and thus he set out to do good. It was a habit that he had to only succumb to actions that were bad. So I circled in red here to actions that were bad because it sounds like he was kind of not making very good choices and was kind of a bad boy. So I put on the side there in the margin that the little boy was known for being bad. His challenge, he knew, would be an abundant one, but he would succeed when the day was done. So he began and found it easy to assist others that were needy. He began to help others. So, really that's what that stanza is saying, that he began to help other people. He'd open doors and lug bags. He was even agreeable enough to help raise flags. The boy found out that it was fun to help other people, each and every one. So this stanza says that the boy was actually enjoying this, helping other people. He wasn't dreading it. He wasn't, disliking it. He enjoyed it. And from that day on, he was no longer bad. On days there was no one to help, he was actually sad. To curb his sadness, he became a volunteer, giving his time to others, and his new mission was clear. So he became a volunteer so he wouldn't be sad. He enjoyed helping others, and when he wasn't helping others, he became sad. So he decided to become a volunteer. He was now a good boy and enjoyed this label. He offered his time whenever he was able. He'd spend time at the shelter and with homeless pets. He also visited old people and injured vets. So I circled here that he was now a good boy because in the first stanza, I circled that he was a bad boy. Well, in this last stanza, it says he was now a good boy. So that shows me character change, and we know that that has something to do with the theme. He became a good boy, and he was happy about it. It said, and he enjoyed this label. When someone gives you a label, that means they are labeling you as something. You could be labeled as a jock. You could be labeled as good. You could be labeled as bad. But he enjoyed his good boy label at the end of this poem. All right, so now we're going to read it a third time. And this third time we're going to read it, we're going to mark the structure. So again, these are a lot of steps, but it's going to help you in order to answer those questions and really to move towards analyzing poetry. The little boy, he thought he could, and thus he set out to do good. It was a habit that he had to only succumb to actions that were bad. So we're going to circle the rhyming words, could and good, had and bad, and we can go ahead and label them A, B, B. So this is the first stanza, and there are a total of 8 lines in this stanza. And so far, we have an A, B, B rhyme scheme. Let's go on to the next stanza. His challenge, he knew, would be an abundant one, but he would succeed when the day was done. So he began and found it easy to assist others that were needy. Circling the lines again, lines 2 and 4, and lines 6 and 8 rhyme. One and done, easy and needy. And we're going to go ahead and give them C, C, D, D. Okay, all brand new rhyming words. Again, this is stanza 2, and there are 8 lines again in stanza 2. So we're beginning to see a pattern. Every line 2 and 4 rhyme, and every line 6 and 8 rhyme. And every stanza has 8 lines. So let's see if this pattern continues the rest of the way through the poem. So we have bags and flags, fun and one. Again, they're rhyming the same lines. Lines 6 and 8 actually rhyme with lines with the stanza 2, the first set of rhyming words. So we need to bring back those C's. So E-E-C-C. And again, there are 8 lines in stanza 3. Going on to stanza 4, we have the rhyming words bad and sad, volunteer and clear. B-B-F-F. So those first 2 sets of rhyming words were also in stanza 1. Okay, the add words. This is also 8 lines. And then we have a final stanza. He was now a good boy and enjoyed this label. He offered his time whenever he was able. He'd spend time at the shelter and with homeless pets. He also visited old people and injured vets. Label and able rhyme, and pets and vets rhyme. So here we have G-G-H-H. And again, 8 lines in stanza 5. So there's a really easy way then to go ahead and figure out how many total lines were in this poem. So the entire poem has 5 stanzas. 5 stanzas. Each stanza has 8 lines. So if we do a little multiplication and take 8 lines times 5 stanzas, we come up with 40 lines total. And there's a basic A-A-B-B rhyme scheme. So in each stanza, the scheme here is lines 2 and 4 rhyme with each other, and lines 6 and 8 rhyme with each other. So now we're going to answer the questions, and this is the last step. So what was the challenge faced by the boy? Well, the challenge was that he was bad and he wanted to be a good boy, so that was his challenge. The meaning of to curb his sadness really meant that he was to have his sadness go away. If you look at the context clues in that stanza, it tells us of all of these things that he was doing in order to make his sadness go away. Finally, not finally, but number 3 says, which line from the poem lets the reader know that the main character is relieved to be considered a good boy? In stanza 5, it says that he was now a good boy and he enjoyed his label, and we circled that. What is at least one possible theme of this poem? Provide evidence from the text to support the theme you choose. Well, one possible theme is that even bad people can change. In the text, it tells how a bad boy turns into a good boy. And the proof here is his actions were bad from the first stanza, and he was now a good boy from the last stanza. So the next thing that you're going to do is going to complete an assignment using these same strategies. You're going to choose between 2 poems. You can look at both of them and decide, and you only need to complete one, A Daddy and His Little Girl, or In Loving Memory of Kobe Bryant. As always, please contact me if you have any questions. Email me or message me in Schoology, and I will get right back to you and hopefully be able to work through this with you. Have fun reading poetry. And hopefully you'll be able to, get some meaning out of this poetry as we move toward poetry analysis. Have a great week. Bye.